Hi there, it's Natasha, and today I have a card for you featuring this Christmas stamp set from AliExpress. I really like those smaller triangles, but today I'm going to use that larger triangle. It has smaller pattern triangles inside of it. Just using my EK Success powder tool because I'm going to be doing some heat embossing later on. And I was just trying to get a couple of cards filmed today. This was filmed on the day of my surgery before I went in, and it was good to take my mind off it, but I also wanted to get some filmed so that I could edit them whilst I was in recovery. I'm just going to do a pattern on this one. I'm not patient enough to draw in lines and pencil lines and make it all perfect, so I'm going to do my best, and I somehow did not end up mucking it up, which is a miracle in itself. But anyhow, I am going to stamp the pattern just as you see. I'm using some VersaFine Onyx Black ink because I'm going to use some clear embossing powder to emboss it. You could also just use some embossing ink to stamp the triangle and then use black embossing powder if you didn't have one or the other, but I find this way slightly easier. So I'm just carrying on my pattern and making sure that I fill up the whole page. I have a Ranger craft mat underneath this, so everything just wipes off really nicely, although my craft mat is getting to be in a bit of a state these days. Making sure I fill up all the wee places. Then I'm using some Zing clear embossing powder and sprinkling it over. It's kind of hard to hold on to because it's a whole piece is covered in the embossing powder, so I get out my little reverse tweezers, and then I am one of those people who would always spill my embossing powder, so I need to make sure I put it back in and put the cap on the bottle. I'm going to use my heat gun to melt it. Make sure that you heat from the back and the front, and that way it reduces some of the warping that you'll experience. You'll see it turn from a light grey colour into a nice deep dark grey. I'm actually going to, black, sorry. I'm going to show you two cards today, just because the two ideas came to me at the same time, so I thought I may as well do a 2 for 1. And they're pretty similar, just ever so slightly different styles. So you can see this one's all melted up. I'll wipe down that mess on my craft mat, clean my stamp a little bit before I start my second piece. I'm also going to heat emboss this piece, so I'm going to use my powder tool again to make sure that there's no static left, and then my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and this time I'm going to do random triangles. So it's the same stamp, but I'm trying to make sure that the triangles all face in different directions, and I'm turning the triangles so that the pattern is rotating and not in the same place beside each other. I'm filling up the card as though it were a pattern piece of paper, so making sure I've got little bits coming off the edge here and there. And then I'm going to do the same thing and use the Zing clear embossing powder to sprinkle over top. Using my tweezers again and pop it back in the bottle. I've had too many accidents over time with embossing powders. And sometimes I have to use a dry paintbrush to get off any little specks that have stuck somewhere that I didn't want them to of the embossing powder before I melt it, so that helps. And then I'm just going to melt this one. I've sped this video up by a couple of times, so it is a little bit slower in real life, but I think these two cards took me about 20 minutes to make. So I've got my two pieces here, and then I'm going to use the Distress Oxide in Cracked Pistachio. I didn't so much as have a plan when I was doing this, and I kind of almost like the card better black and white, but too late once you've started. So you also need to remember that when you're using distress inks, whether it be oxide or the regular ones, that they are wet and they will come off with your fingers, your fingerprints. So make sure that you are holding something, a little piece of scrap paper, when you're touching the paper. Just using a paper towel to buff off some of the extra colour that's laying on top of the embossed sections. and then I have a card base underneath here. Then I'm going to use one of these little tags. All of these tags came from AliExpress, and then using this wow stamp set, and this one is going to say happy birthday on it. I cut it out of I had done the embossing on some Bristol smooth paper, and my card base is Nina Solar White 110 pound, and I'd cut it out of Nina Solar White because I had coloured the Bristol cardstock, and so it was no longer white, and you wouldn't be able to tell the colour difference between the two whites. Just using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink to stamp out my sentiment again. And then this is where I decide that it kind of looks a bit plain or a bit funny when I put it on top of the card. These were really quick and simple cards, and I didn't have too much time to spend on them, but yeah, I used to want them to look nice. And these are kind of masculine ones. I was thinking more for men. Anyway, so I use my little foam pad just to add a little bit extra around the edges. It's a little bit hard to see in the video, but I wanted just a little bit of colour in the outside, and then I felt like it blended in too much into the background. So this is where I decided that I wanted a black mat around the outside of the entire sheet, and then I'm going to do my sneaky little trick that nobody ever has to know, and I'm going to cut a tag out of the center of that bit that will go in behind the card front, so no one will ever know that you've got a bit missing. Just in my little precision tip bottle is some Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte, and I'm just sticking down that little one on the black tag so that it gives it a little bit of an outline and helps it to stand out a little bit more. So then I stick down my matte, and again I'm using wet glue so that it gives you time to adjust it when you pop it down. And then stick this one on top, and then stick the little tag set on using some foam tape, and this is the AliExpress foam tape as well. Then I'm just going to use some of the white Nuvo drops, and I did look around for a few colors that I was thinking whether I'd do greens or blues, because it's obviously a tealy kind of color, and so I'm just using the white, and it's really hard to see on camera, I apologize, but they're doing tiny wee dots here, there and everywhere, just to finish it off. There you can kind of see them a bit better there. And I'm hardly putting anything out, they're really tiny dots. So that's the first card finished, and then the second card is this one, and I'm going to keep this one plain. I don't put any colour or ink over top of it. I'm going to cut it down so that it fits my card front. I actually lost some footage from the end of this one, so it does skip and you get a final view. I looked up and all of a sudden my camera wasn't recording, so that's okay. I have just put two bits together and you still get the gist of how they're made. So I'm putting a black mat on this one as well, and then this one I have cut out in Nina Solar White, and then I can see the difference between the two colours there, so I pick up a piece of Bristol Smooth and then I cut the tag out of that one as well, because I like that colour better. It's hard to see in the video, but it did make a difference in real life. And then just doing the same thing using the multi-medium and the matte to add some glue onto the back of the sheet, onto the back of the card front. Sticking it down onto the mat. And then this one is going to say birthday wishes, and I lose a wee bit of footage just here. Anyhow, I just put some string through the tag front and a little bit of foam to pop it up, and that's that one finished too. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.